So again, thank you for joining us. We are super excited to have Paul Elfstrom here for this month's Cannabis Industry Meetup. He's going to be discussing cultivation with an emphasis on hydroponics. Please keep yourself muted and put your questions into the chat. And he's got about a half hour of slides to share, and then maybe we can open it up to questions after that. Paul, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for everyone on the call tuning in. So I'm going to share my slide deck here. And yeah, my name is Paul Elfstrom. I'm the founder and CEO of Wheatfield Farms and Wheatfield Gardens. So what you're looking at there is our facility, our farm, and it's quite large. So that is an industrial greenhouse, what you're looking at there. So that is 11.5 acres of glass. And then we have that rather large head house that serves as kind of the central utility plant for our farm. And the history of this farm is quite interesting. It was built in the early 90s, and at the time it was actually manufactured in Holland and then shipped over in shipping containers. All that glass and steel was shipped over and assembled in Niagara County. We're located in North Tonawanda, New York, about 8 miles from Niagara Falls. And we took over the farm. Operated as a industrial tomato and cucumber production facility from 1995 till 2004. And at that point, the previous owners kind of lost interest, and because of foreign competition for commodity items like that, it really, brought them down. So they gave it up, and then my team of investors came in 2015 and took over the facility. And one of the interesting things about it is everything is done hydroponically in this farm. There is no soil at the farm. We do everything utilizing water. Water is our key ingredient that we use to cultivate plants. So again, the facility was built in 1994, and then what we did in 2016 is we took advantage of the introduction of LED horticultural lighting, which has really spurred this renewed interest in controlled environment agriculture, which is the umbrella term that goes over any kind of indoor growing, whether it's greenhouse or full indoor. They're all seeking to control the environment in those spaces to enhance plant growth. So we looked at a supply chain that was broken here in Western New York, and 98% of all the lettuces we eat here are grown in either Salinas, California, or Yuma, Arizona, and you really can't get further from Western New York. So we saw an opportunity to disrupt this supply chain, and so since 2018 we've been growing head lettuces and culinary herbs. And in addition to that, in 2017, when the governor announced the research pilot program, we were the first greenhouse member, large-scale greenhouse member of that research pilot program. And now, as we approach adult use cannabis, the legalization of such, we are licensed New York State cannabinoid hemp cultivators, processors, and a nursery dealer. And we also do a fair bit of research and development centered around controlled environment agriculture, and we have received 3 US and Canadian patents for some of our ag tech that was developed here. And here are just a quick summary of the facility. We have 550,000 square feet of potential cultivation area. You can see a picture right there of our cannabinoid hemp growing in one of our bays in our greenhouse. And that bay you're looking at right there is 21 feet wide and 168 feet long. And there are over 3,800 plants in that one bay you're looking at there. We have 11 of those bays in one of our sections. So we are a scale producer of this. So we can do it at scale and we can do it efficiently. So, and then, you know, it takes a lot of energy to run a place like this. So that's something we really focus on is through the use of hydroponics, we use 95% less water than traditional outdoor growing. And with some of the innovations we've come out with, we have really reduced our watts per square foot in terms of what the energy it takes to grow plants in out of season. For example, right now we're growing basil and head lettuce for tops friendly markets in the middle of winter. So, and then the other unique technology we employ is cogeneration, another super efficient way to generate power for high users like ourselves. This cogeneration is often used at universities, and I know in Rochester, the Eastman Kodak facility uses cogeneration, and we're another one that uses this amazing technology that enables you to capture the heat that comes with electrical production and put it to use in your facility. And for us, we use it to melt the snow on the roof. So that heat is very valuable to us. And then here you can see some more pictures of what we do and our commitment to energy efficiency here. We've employed this microgrid technology and we've been able to achieve an 85% thermal efficiency, meaning we use 85% of the thermal energy that our cogen unit produces. And that's a picture of the unit on the right-hand side there. Basically, there's a 18-cylinder truck engine inside of that box that spins a generator, and it's all powered by natural gas. And then all the equipment on the top of the unit you see there is all heat recovery equipment. So we're recovering the heat from the friction of the engine as well as the exhaust that comes out of the unit. We're capturing that hot exhaust and transferring that heat to hot water. And then the other thing that we did that's really unique is we capture the CO2 from this. You can see the exhaust right here. We are actually pulling that exhaust into the facility so that we can supplement CO2 to our plants. And plants need CO2. It is the only source of carbon for plants. It's the only way they can make sugars and therefore make cannabis flowers using carbon. So we have a unique facility and a lot of capabilities, and they all surround the technology of hydroponics. And here you can see where we have some interesting research affiliation with the Cornell College of Animal and Life Sciences. And then also there's a public-private consortium in New York called GLAZE, which stands for the Greenhouse Lighting and Systems Engineering Consortium. So we've done a number of energy efficiency studies, as well as some studies on hydroponics and the efficiencies that come with that. And right here, you can see a lit part of our greenhouse. That's a 1 acre section where we produce lettuces and culinary herbs. And then we also have a deep commitment to education. We partner with Niagara County Community College with their horticulture program, and we host 3 interns every semester for real hands-on hydroponic education, where they can learn both the leafy green side and then also the hemp cannabis side. So this large greenhouse over here is our hemp cannabis greenhouse. This is 5.5 acres of climate controlled greenhouse. And last summer we grew 26,000 plants, hemp plants in that greenhouse, and brought them all to successful 95% of them to successful completion, and passed all of our tests in terms of microbial contamination, heavy metals, all of that. We produced medical grade hemp flower last summer. So, and then as far as our certification license, I mentioned this earlier, we're a licensed hemp cultivator, a licensed hemp processor. And then we also are very proud to hold on to this New York State grown and certified sticker that we're able to put on every package of our lettuce and herbs. And this is a New York State program that is only awarded to people that achieve a a food safety certification that goes beyond what is typically required. So we're very proud of that we're able to maintain this compliance and produce clean product on a daily basis. And then we have a great team involved. I have a great team that works at the farm. We have 15 full-time employees that do everything on the farm. So it's a really unique place to work, and really interesting for people to see how your food is produced. So we do a lot of work with STEM programs with Niagara, the schools, the high schools around us, or kids that are interested in science, technology, engineering, and math can come and see the application of those skills at our farm. So, and then this was last summer. You can see two of our employees in there tending to our hemp plants, and that was inside that five acre greenhouse you saw earlier. So I've told you a little bit about myself and what we do at our farm, and all of those plants you're looking at there were grown, looks like a jungle in there, but all those plants were grown using a type of hydroponics called drip irrigation, where those plants are potted in 2 gallons of Coco Coir, and then we drip feed them. You can imagine how hard it would be to hand water 26,000 plants. So we have a very sophisticated irrigation system that delivers just the right amount of nutrients right directly to the roots. And that's essentially what hydroponics is. So I'm just going to switch presentations here and go and focus on the different hydroponic methods of growing plants. And I hope it is educational for everybody here. So I'm just gonna share this presentation. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. So we're just going to spend some time talking about hydroponics, and here are some of the topics we're going to cover. We're going to introduce it, the history of hydroponics, what are the different hydroponic systems, why do it, and then get into some of the advantages and disadvantages, what can you grow, and then conclude. And then I'm happy to take questions afterwards. So what does hydroponics means? It actually is the cultivation of plants in water. It's a technique for growing plants without soil. Utilizing this technology, the roots absorb balanced nutrients dissolved in water and meets all the plant's developmental needs. And that's what it's all about, is delivering exactly what's needed without overfeeding the plants. And we can use a lot of media, which takes the place of soil in hydroponics, which is the home. Usually in soil grown, the roots are always hidden in the soil. So we have to keep the roots. We can never let them dry out. So we look for medium that is also that achieves that stays moist for extended periods of time, but then also allows allows air to get to the roots, because roots need air. If you ever try to grow something in clay, it doesn't work because it's it's not porous. So again, the history of hydroponics. The first time I ever saw hydroponics was when my parents took me to Epcot Center, and I've been fascinated by it ever since. But Dr. Garicki is credited with kind of discovering it, and he coined the term hydroponics, and it's borrowed from Greek words: hydro, obviously water, and then panos, labor. So it's the water's doing the work for the plant. So there's several hydroponic systems that I wanted to everybody. There are several different ways to use hydroponics. It's not just all one system. It's just a matter of what system efficiently gets these nutrients to those root balls you see in that picture. And when you break down the photosynthesis process, it's kind of simple. It's just carbon dioxide, like I mentioned before, which is the only source of carbon for plants, plus water, and then the plant converts that to glucose and oxygen. And you can see there's no mention of soil. So soil is not required to grow. So, but what is required to grow is obviously water, nutrients, and oxygen. So some of the more familiar plants that everyone's seen, grow in hydroponics are lettuces. Obviously, we've seen a lot of news stories about startup companies that have, vertical farms that are growing lettuces hydroponically. So it's a really efficient way to do it. And some of the benefits include that we can get increased yields with it because of our precise ability to deliver nutrients. And then we can control the nutrient delivery. What's an interesting discovery is that pH of the nutrients, the water that plants' roots are in, is so critical to that plant uptaking the nutrients that you deliver them. So if you, for example, if you have water that is really acidic, the roots will close their ability to uptake that nutrients that's in that water. So there's several advantages of doing soilless, and here are some. And then just how does hydroponics work? I explained some of this a little bit, was the fact that you need water, air, and nutrients to the roots. And you can see an example of that here, which is kind of a modified nutrient film technique, where you're just dripping this nutrient mixture across a set of plants that have their roots dangling in that little stream. And then the air stone is providing the oxygen, and then you're just replacing the nutrients as the plants consume it. So here are the types of hydroponic systems. There is a wick system that pulls the water up via osmosis. And then there's this a term called deep water culture, which we use at our farm for our lettuces, where we have these large ponds that, as you saw, are 21 feet wide and 168 feet long, and they're about 18 inches deep. And we're able to float the plants on styrofoam boards that allow the roots to dangle into that nutrient-rich water. And then there's a type called ebb and flow, or some people call it drain and flow, where you put the plants on a table, and the table floods twice a day to keep the roots wet. And then the nutrient film technique was kind of pictured earlier. And then this newer form of hydroponics is this aeroponic system. There's a company called Aerofarms that operates in New Jersey. I kind of invented this, where instead of just running a little stream of water, they actually spray the roots with a mist, and it claims to allow more oxygen to the root system. So here some of those different strategies are pictured here. Here's that wicking system, where the water will just get drawn up into the medium, and that will allow the roots to remain moist. And then this on the right side, you see kind of a modified version of our deep water culture, where you have these floating platforms that are perforated, and we just poke the plant through, the roots through, and then they remain in that water until we harvest them. And they have everything they need in that water to promote growth. Then here we see, again, that other system, the ebb and flow, where you're just flooding a table and the plants sit on that table. And then this is what we employ in our large greenhouse, is this drip system, where we have large nutrient tanks that sit in the center of our facility, and then we're able to send out via computer controls and solenoid valves, we're able to send accurate doses of nutrient solution directly to the plants via like a drip stick. And that way we put moisture sensors in our plants, so we know exactly when the growing media begins to get dry, and then we can supplement with a shot of what we call fertigation, which is fertilizer and irrigation in one shot. And then again, another picture of that nutrient film technique that takes advantage of, just a very simple system, less moving parts, there's less parts that need to be serviced. So this is a very good system for home growers and stuff, where you just trickling a nutrient-rich water source across the roots. And then again, here's that aeroponic, kind of the newer hydroponic system where they're not dripping the water past, versus this way they're misting the roots and getting all of the roots the nutrients they need. And then I talked a lot about media, and that's, instead of soil, these are some of the examples of media and some of the advantages and disadvantages of particular types. And for our purposes, when we cultivate hemp and cannabis, we use Coco Coir. It is our go-to medium. It is ideal for, in my opinion, for the cannabis plant. It has excellent air to water ratio with great water retention. So Coco Coir is, what it is actually the husk of a coconut that is ground up. So the majority of it comes from countries like Sri Lanka and Italy and India, where they harvest this renewable resource, and then we put it in a bag, and then what we're able to do is drip our nutrients in there, and just by the natural porosity of this media of Coco Coir, it is ideal for this. So it maintains a 30% porosity throughout the 12-week growth cycle we have. So that is the key, that we're able to get oxygen to these plants during the growth cycle, to the roots during the growth cycle. And Coco Coir is biodegradable, and it's just a great, I can't recommend it enough. It's what we are committed to doing. And when you look at some of these other mediums, you'll see why. Rock wool is also commonly used, and for some of the same reasons. It's a fibrous material made from melted rock. And the thing I do not like about it is it's not biodegradable, and it's very difficult to get rid of. I would not recommend this unless you're a very small scale grower. It does have it stays wet for days. That's what people really like about it, is you can water your plants and you can leave them for days. And so it's really for really small scale grows, and a majority of the illegal cannabis is grown in this media because they don't have to worry about throwing things out and stuff. And then some other lesser used media are things like expanded clay pellets. These pellets are kind of inert, and they allow the pots that they're put in to drain quickly, and then they're obviously reusable. And yeah, I haven't had much experience with them because they are kind of expensive, and they're very difficult to do at scale because they're heavy. But I do know some nursery growers that use them. And then there's also the possibility, we don't use it, but some people do use potting soil, and they have to mix it with a lot of perlite. And that, again, perlite and the Coco Coir will enhance the porosity of the soil so that you can do hydroponics and allow it to drain quicker. And then I talked a lot about nutrient solutions, and I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail here. In hydroponics, we are able to mix our nutrient solutions very accurately, so we can really control what the plant eats. And with a plant like hemp cannabis, it is what's called in our industry a nitrogen hog. It's a very vigorous plant, so therefore it needs a lot of nitrogen to power that vigor. And there's something I learned recently is that there are only 17 essential elements that plants need to grow and reproduce. There's a ton of companies out there that have these proprietary mix of fertilizers that say they do wonders, but it's really down to 17 essential elements to grow. And they're kind of divided into, obviously hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. But then there are these macro elements, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, which are the ones that we, focus on. And then there's a lot of micro elements that go into the mix as well. So these mixes can be customized in hydroponics for the stage of the plant, stage of growth that we are in the plant. And again, I talked a little bit about pH control before. And so in order for these elements to enter the plant, they have to be delivered to the plant at a specific pH. If it's outside of that range, you will start to see, if it's outside of 5.8 to 6.4, you will start to see stress in the plant. They will begin to not be able to uptake all of those nutrients, and you'll see problems in them. And then electroconductivity is just a measurement of the amount of elements in the soil. As you get more elements, the ability of that water to carry electricity increases. So it's a very accurate measure of how charged your nutrient solution is. And then just with where we are located in the world, to grow cannabis year round, you need to have supplemental lighting. So we choose LED lighting. And then, temperature is also a very important aspect to nutrients. So if the water temperature is out of this range, then you have problems. We see this in the summertime. We get all of our water from the surface of Lake Erie, and that water can really increase in temperature in late summer. So that's another thing to be mindful for when you.
Hi, Paul. Paul,
yeah.
If I could just interrupt for 1 second. Yesterday, I learned about how if the female plant is stressed, it can turn into a hermaphrodite.
Yep.
Could you just describe that a little bit, and like what stresses out the plant?
Yeah, it's actually a function of two things. So in all other commercial crops produced in the United States, there are very settled genetics and certified genetics. In the world of hemp and cannabis, that is the furthest thing from the truth. There are genetics from millions of years ago that are been crossed, and there's no standardization in it. So what you end up with is a lot of what we call genetic drift, where you have plants that just don't know what they are. So they have so much genetic material that has been crossed so many times that it tends to confuse the whole genome of the plant. So you can get some really weird stress reactions. And one of those is if you lose control of one of these things, like for example, temperature, if your temperature is consistently over 95 degrees or something, the plant will get so stressed out that a reaction will happen that you're not expecting. And one of those is the hermaphrodation of female plants. So in cannabis, the only plants that produce this flower are the female plants. So and that's where all of these valuable cannabinoids are concentrated in the flower of the plant. So it's very desirable to not have any males, and because they will pollinate your female plants, and all of the energy that would normally go into the flowers, all that plant energy will go into producing seeds that have zero, THC or CBD in them. So you really want to avoid that. So, but with the plant stress that you can see, and you can have a plant that looks like a female, but then as it matures, it will develop these male characteristics, and in particular, pollen sacs. So you'll get this really strange looking plant that looks like a female flower, but it'll actually pollinate your entire crop. So, it's something that we do on a daily basis when we cultivate, is we sex all of our plants to make sure they're female. And then also we are always scouting for bugs and invasive species in our greenhouse. So those are the two things that we look for every day, is any kind of possible hermaphrodite, and or any rogue male that we see that gets by our QC department. So very, very important, and great question. Thanks for asking it. And then back to hydroponics, the advantages. We've seen higher yields in smaller spaces. I mean, I talked to some cannabis growers. There's the average. I've seen the cannabis per square foot is how they measure the actual yield of dry flower. The average in the United States right now is 55 grams per square foot. And I think with the right environment, and as we hone in on this genetics, there's no reason we can't take that to 200-300 grams per square foot. So, and then what I mentioned before about the nutrients, the ability, the versatility of hydroponics is great in that we have specific recipes of this nutrient mix that we give to the plants in these different phases. So we have a grow mix, and then we have this bloom mix, where we're able to, when the plant starts flowering, we give it a different mix of nutrients that promotes those flowers. So really interesting research coming out on that as well. So, and then some of the other advantages is, is using specific lighting. We're seeing that at a couple studies out of Cornell showing the different light spectrum, meaning like blue and red and white, can induce plant responses that are very desirable, like more cannabinoids, more terpenes, and things of that nature. And then again, with the soil, soil is a great harbinger for pests. Things like fungus gnats, thrips, and aphids are very comfortable in soil. And then, of course, the weeding. There's no weeding needed. And we employ a lot of automation. Like I was saying about our fertigation, we're able to accurately dose a plant within 15 milliliters, plus or minus. We can do 20,000 plants at a time. So really opportunities that you can take advantage of scale in this, because you're just repeating what you did before.
Paul, we have another question before we move on from stresses to the plants. What about vapor pressure deficit? Kay had a great question.
Yeah, that's one of the things we really focus on at the farm. So vapor pressure deficit is a great indicator of a plant's ability to transpire. So what is happening when a plant transpires? There is water vapor leaving the top of the leaf of a plant. So that is what transpiration is. So what you need lower pressure outside of that leaf to allow for that water vapor to come out. So that's why your vapor pressure deficit is very important. You need that deficit in order for the plants to transpire. And you calculate vapor pressure deficit is a calculation of both temperature and humidity. So you calculate it at, for example, we use 76 degrees Fahrenheit, and then about 55% relative humidity is one of our set points for when we flower a plant. And what that produces is a vapor pressure deficit about 1.5 to 1.6. And what we find is that's a great happy area for the plant. We see very little plant stress, and we see really enhanced transpiration. So we believe that, and through research with other people, we think that is kind of the ideal set point for a lot. But again, it's genetic specific to that. And there.
Sorry, if I can, I hope I'm not belaboring this, but so how do you control for that? How do you control for the vapor pressure?
Yeah, so we have a really complex system of sensors in our greenhouse and in our indoor facility that we modulate fans. So when the temperature increases, we will modulate fans higher to try and bring that temperature down. And then in our indoor room, when you have 2,000 plants inside of a space that has 2,000 square feet, the example I always use is, have you ever put a live plant inside your car and walked away for a little while? The windows immediately fog up, and that's because the plant is spitting water out when it's growing. So your relative humidity can increase very quickly indoors. So it's critical that you have an ability to really dehumidify that moist air to maintain that relative humidity that contributes so much to the vapor pressure deficit. You have to keep that humidity down because the plant will shut down. Once you get to about 75-85% relative humidity, what's called the stomata of the plant, which is basically their breathing tube, will shut. and the plant will just not be growing at that point. So hopefully
So
that answers the question.
can one, this is just my personal curiosity, sorry. So can one safely assume then that cannabis does not grow in tropical environments?
It doesn't grow ideally.
Okay.
You know, the quality of flower that you would get off of if you were like, for example, in like a rainforest or something, would be absolutely horrible. A great place to grow cannabis naturally would be in like a high desert place. Like for example, in the country of Colombia, which is equatorial, you get 12 hours of sunlight all the time. So you can, and at that, their environment is very good because it's not at high elevation. You don't get the high humidity you get at lower elevation. So some of those outdoor grow, that's why it's very difficult to grow cannabis, in my opinion, outdoors in New York, because of the amount of relative humidity we see in late summer.
Right.
Very difficult. The plant will grow, but you really have to watch out for things like powdery mildew and mold and things that come along with condensation forming on the plant. So that's one thing we stay away from in our indoor farm, is we never want to cross that dew point. You never want to see any liquid moisture that forms on any part of the plant. Cannot have condensation anywhere in the space. So
Cool, thanks. Thanks for humoring me.
oh, my pleasure. And then some of the disadvantages of, it's not all roses, is it's very expensive to set up one of these systems. The CapEx is incredible, but where we see advantages is with the operating expense. So over time, we wouldn't have to invest in soil, and we use 95% less water. So there's a lot of the upfront cost is there. And then labor is a huge aspect when you scale something up. There's a lot of movement. We try to limit the amount of movement and transplanting and all of that. So and then obviously a high level of expertise is needed, both on the plant side, but and almost as importantly, I'm not even a plant scientist. I'm an engineer, but process engineer that I just see plant growing as a process that we can break down into different aspects. So, and then this last one is really important. Is again back to that temperature aspect. Is waterborne diseases can spread incredibly rapidly if you lose temperature control of your water. So there's a bacteria that is very harmful to plants that's always there in the water, but it will only bloom when the temperature of that water reaches 80 degrees.
Is that Clostridium?
It's called Pythium. So Pythium spore bacteria will grow once the temperature reaches it. So we have to keep all of our water chilled below that threshold temperature. Otherwise, and that's what a lot of people fail to understand, is the importance of pH and temperature when you're using hydroponics. So that's one of the real major things, is that water temperature and with hydroponics. So that Pythium will wipe out an entire crop. Like for example, we haven't had it yet, but if we had one of those ponds you saw in the previous one, we would have to drain. If we had Pythium in there, we'd have to drain the whole pond and sanitize it to get rid of it. So it's just a disaster. So word of warning out there for people venturing into this: temperature and pH of your fertigation is more important than the nutrients.
If you had to drain everything because of that bacterium, how long does that take, and how long can the plants survive without being in water?
Yeah, they can survive as long as the roots do not dry out. So as long as once the roots are bone dry, the plant is dead. It's beginning to decay. But this Pythium is so virulent that if you have it, it will almost kill all the plants within 48 hours.
Kay has a question about, do you know what the parts per million are, like for the bacterium to the water?
I don't know that I don't know the answer to that question. We fortunately haven't run into it, but I've just heard of other facilities that happening to them. So I don't know what it is, but it's something we take water testing to a new level. We send out samples of water every 3 days to get professionally to identify what's in our water, our fresh water supply, as well as the water the potable water on site. So it is critical, but I don't know what the level is. I just know it's omnipresent. It's always there.
It might be parts per billion too. So,
Just bloom, it's like algae.
Yeah.
That if you're given the right conditions, it will just grow so fast. So, but again, here's the some of the hydroponics is just a platform, and we can grow almost any plant and using hydroponics, from tomatoes. 95% of all the tomatoes on the vine consumed in the United States are grown in greenhouses. Most of them right across the border in Canada. It's a place called Leamington in Canada that has 1,100 acres of greenhouses that grow tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers that you see at Wegmans and Tops every day. Next time you grab one, it will have the country of origin in there, and most of the time it's either Canada or Mexico.
Oh, all right. I have another question. I'm so sorry.
Yep.
So when I eat a tomato that was hydroponically grown or greenhouse grown, it doesn't taste as good as a tomato that I grew in soil. Is there something similar with like cannabis, where is there any difference in, I don't know, THC content or the high or whatever that's?
No, I don't, my opinion, no. I think I know why tomatoes taste terrible. That are greenhouse grown. We call them water balls. I mean, it's just water.
Gotcha.
What happened is, when before CRISPR and gene editing and all of that, you bred plants, and the tomato plant that you see on your store shelf, the tomatoes you see there are not bred for flavor. They are bred for travel. So that was a single trait they were looking for. What tomato can handle being bounced around in a truck for 3,000 miles and still be available at the end of it? Well, who cares what it tastes like? This one is rock hard.
Yeah.
And greenhouse tomatoes is where they pick them all green. They're all green, and then they hit them with ethylene to turn them red artificially. So they're all premature tomatoes. They haven't had time to form sugars, and that's what makes outdoor tomatoes taste so good. Is you are allowing the ripening and all of those sugars that form in the last 3 weeks. Even if you took a tomato that you grow in your backyard and you pick it green, try to eat it, tastes terrible. But once let it mature on the vine, that those last 2 weeks is where all the sugar gets put in there when it turns red. So
I just want to remind all of our listeners, and thank you everyone who has stuck with us, that the Central Library is also home to the Carlson Center for Intellectual Property. And there are 3 types of patents: design, utility, and plant. So cannabis is a plant that you can patent if you have a strain of it that is asexually reproduced. And we can let you know how to get in touch with the manager of the Carlson Center for Intellectual Property if you are interested in patenting a plant.
Yep. And if I could just add to that Cornell University received a USDA grant to establish the first cannabinoid or hemp industrial hemp seed bank in the United States. So again, there's a brilliant geneticist at Cornell named Larry Smart, he's actually a geneticist, but he runs the hemp program at Cornell. So
cool.
Another great resource there. So, but yeah, that's what I have. So, to end it, I mean, all you need is water, oxygen, and you can grow plants. So, this was something that somebody sent me recently, just showing, a high school that grew plants in water bottles in their window.
Cool.
It's
So
an
we
amazing
have a
technology,
question.
and I'm happy
We
to
have
take
we have a
questions.
question from Kay again. Are there auto flowering vegetables as cannabis?
Yeah, I think she's referring to the types of cannabis plants. So we type them in genetics. So you have a type 1 plant is one that produces THC.
Hold on one second. Kate, or Kay, do you want to unmute yourself and ask this directly so I don't misinterpret anything?
Um, like you know how cannabis, there are auto flowering plants that flower within like 30 days. Are there vegetables the same way? No.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about flowering, the intent for cannabis is very important because that's where the concentrated materials are for. But in vegetables, I don't know of it. Tomato plants are photo dependent, but one thing that we do see, we grow a lot of basil. We all grow all the basil for Tops Markets, and what we see is a flowering response in basil to heat. When it gets super hot in the summertime, you'll get what's called bolting, where a plant will start to get stressed and then it'll put out a flower. If you've ever seen you let a basil plant go too long, it'll start flowering. So that's the only time I've seen it. But an auto flower variety of hemp or cannabis is is often referred to also as, you want to Google ruderalis. It's actually Cannabis ruderalis, RUDERLAIS. And those is a specific type of plant that does not require pollen, will flower automatically independent of the light. So the normal cannabis plant is light dependent. So it'll begin flowering when the day length reaches about 14 hours. So that's why you see it in the falls in like August. All of the hemp and that was planted in New York begins to flower, and that's the natural reaction. And then in indoor farming, we manipulate that. So we have light deprivation curtains in our greenhouse that we're able to trick the plant in the month of May when you have, 18 hours of sunlight. We can shut these shades and you can't see your hand in front of your face, despite the fact it's sunny out, and the plant thinks it's fall, and it'll begin to initiate flowers. And that's a common practice. I try to relate it to things people see all the time. So poinsettias at Christmas time. Everybody, it's a beautiful flower. How do they get that to do that? Well, they're all grown in greenhouses that have light deprivation technology. So they initiate the flowering right in November so that they're ready for Christmas time. So that's an example of photo manipulation of a plant species.
Cool. Do we have any other questions for Paul? I know this was a lot of information.
Yeah, I'm sorry to.
No, it's okay. It's interesting. It's a lot of science. But that's what horticulture is. It's science. So, anyone have any questions about just growing or hydroponics in and of itself? Anybody?
Well, my name is
Yes.
Naveen. What opportunities do you see for beginners to compete with a production like such as yours?
Yeah, what I'm really
I look at this and I'm already overwhelmed.
Yeah, this is a scale. This is just huge scale. Well, what's going to happen with cannabis? My prediction, my opinion here too, is just like it's going to kind of be commoditized. And the example I like to use that I think I'm so excited for New York State is I see the tremendous success of the craft brew industry in New York. There are the best beers in the world are brewed right on site in some of these places in New York. And I see the same thing with cannabis. Wheatfield Gardens is going to be the Coors or whatever. There's a place for that. But then all of these micro licenses that will be available to people where you will get a following of your friends and family locally that will just love what you're producing on your small scale. And, you know, you'll be able to charge a premium for it. And that's what I see for the industry, is that it's going to be a mixture of this, you know, scale facilities and then these really robust, smaller operations that produce a really unique craft flavor for people. So I think there's room for everybody. And, you know, we're just proud to, you know, we have a lot to do here. We're willing to share it. So if there are any social equity applicants that are thinking about getting into this industry, we will be applying to the state to be a social equity incubator of hydroponic cultivation techniques. So we will take applicants and free of charge have them come to our facility. And, you know, believe me, I've made all the mistakes already. So, you know, we can really learn from us how to do it. And most importantly, how to do it in a legal market. There's a lot of legacy people that want to get in the legal market, but there's a lot of red tape that we deal with on a daily, and we can teach you how to deal with the red tape of tracking and tracing your plants and doing all of this compliance work that is really going to be challenging to people. And I just would hate to see anyone, you know, fail because of that. So, you know, keep watching us.
That's definitely a concern for the you know, the legacy market. I mean, the legacy market is already excellent.
Oh yeah,
they know how to run a business. They understand supply, demand, distribution. And it's just transitioning to that type of business that has a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
Well, that was going to be my second question. No, thank you for adding that opportunity of visiting the plant and learning from your expertise there. So would you know what timeline that would be, or how can some of us here keep an eye or set up a reminder to say, well, that application's out, let's give it a try?
Yeah, but what I've heard from the government, they've really pinpointed it, and they said late winter, early spring. So that's your exact date.
For the regulations to be.
So for cultivation, I'm you know, I'm as in our position, we will only be eligible for a cultivation and manufacturing license. We won't be able to participate any, you know, anymore. We won't be able to own dispensaries or retail,
right?
Which is great, because, you know, that's how you prevent the monopolization that's occurring in other states, where these big, huge multinational companies come in and just dominate because they're able to own the entire supply chain. We are just going to be a wholesaler. We're going to be working with all of the retailers and choosing who we work with. So,
but the people who have medical licenses, who have been able to fully verticalize, and they will be able to apply for adult use licenses. I think they're going to price them. I think they're going to make it insanely expensive for them to do that. So like a medical dispensary license, what is like $200,000 when they were making those licenses available. But I think, they don't know yet. And the estimations that I've heard is that the first dispensary probably won't open until like March of 2023.
Yeah, I think that's right. But in order to open a dispensary by March, you need to have supply by February. So
I think the legacy market definitely has supply.
Yeah, so I mean, compliance supply. So so what we're fighting for as hemp growers is saying, listen, I've been operating in the legal market for 4 years now, although it's not THC, it's the same exact plant.
Mm-hmm.
So as hemp growers, we had a law passed today in the Senate that would give, you know, because we're very concerned about the head start that these 10 companies will get on everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So we propose that, you know, if we this year, if we can get a provisional license that will allow the people that are professionals in the hemp program can grow some THC plants this summer, we would have adequate supply, not just from those 10 producers that would gouge the market.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if
Yeah.
it's any indication, of one of the 10 licensees yesterday sold their company for $450 million. So,
Oh, good for them.
and so I would expect the license fees for them to be at least $20 million. They should pay $20 million for the privilege of having a vertically integrated head start on everybody, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And then you'd have that $200 million fund funded
I
by the
agree.
companies. And
I
then we
agree.
can promote social equity applicants and make it a thriving business for all, not just a few.
Yeah. Any other questions for Paul?
Well, thanks for answering my question.
My pleasure.
Any other
I
questions?
got a question. As far as growing and like cannabis and going through all the loopholes and everything, is it worth it at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm just very worried about somebody getting sick from black market cannabis. I've seen a few of these legacy, and you know, the use of pesticides is everywhere in the black market, and I think someone's going to get sick, and I'm scared for it. That's the only thing I would say about the black market. I think it's obviously thriving in New York, but I'm just worried that it's such a cash business, and it's prone to robberies and stuff. So we just got to.
I'm gonna speak to that because I think, Paul, you probably have an answer that you're supposed to give. But for Kay, I think the black market will do fine for a while because people are not going to want to pay. If you're a regular user, you're not going to want to pay basically double what you've been paying in these taxes. California, you know, taxed it, you know, unbelievably, and no one was using the dispensaries because it was just too freaking expensive. So I think New York may have a big learning curve like that because we all know how much we like to tax things here. But I think that people that are regular users and have been regular users are going to be like, I'm not paying that much. That's insane. And I say that from personal experience. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to want to use the legal market because it's just going to cost them too much money at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That there's a totally fine line you need to tread around.
Yeah.
You know,
And I'm not
revenues.
worried about pesticides or anything like that. I don't think anyone's going to die from their,
Well,
you know,
would it
the
be
weed they got.
it be costing too much, or would it be costing too much and not getting what you paying for because it's all like dialed down, like on the THC level? And
Well,
Yeah,
there's been
I mean-
two issues. One of which is it's just costing too much, but also, you know, some people feel the quality isn't the same because you know, you're used to getting whatever. But I think I think there will be a market for that for a while. And if like, I don't see that going away, like as it in California, it didn't go away for a very long time because they charged too many taxes on it. So I think the people that buy it regularly right now know what they're getting. They buy it from the same person, right? They know what they're getting. So I don't think that's going to change. They're going to want to get it from the same person. They know what to expect. They know the product. So
Yeah, I agree. You know, there's legacy growers that are the best in the world. There's with that experience, 10, 20 years of experience with something like that, man, you get good at it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think, don't underestimate the legacy market because they don't have like degrees in horticulture. I mean, these people are smart. They're
on the
incredibly
job
smart,
learning.
and they make a great product. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't underestimate that in any way, shape, or form.
No, definitely not. No, and to that point, I started growing when I was in high school. I grew up in Yorktown Heights, New York, downstate. But me and my friends in high school, we used to grow plants outside. And the black market is thriving there. But one resource I used that I found really helpful, and to this day I recommend it, is there was a book that was written in 1984, I think, by a guy named Ed Rosenthal, and it is kind of the Bible of how to home grow. So if anyone wants to, if you Google Ed Rosenthal, you'll see a really good cannabis book that I used that piqued my interest in the plant, 30 years ago. So
Yeah, I think it's important, like, because everything that we've talked about this evening has been, kind of highly technical, and, kind of sounds like you need like, a master's or PhD in like botany or something like that. But, I come from farmers in Pennsylvania, and they don't have any formal education, but they certainly know how to grow something. So don't let the academics of this like deter you, because there's, learning how to do something, you learn it by doing it. You don't necessarily learn it by going to school and being taught it. So
yeah, just if I could just say one thing about that was that the cannabis is just held to a different level, and the fact that in the legal market you are going to be required to pass a test with every batch you grow is really going to be what I think requires the attention to detail that we do here. You really one thing, selling a tomato, that's fine. It doesn't have to be tested or anything like that. But when you're testing for microbials, mycotoxins, trace amounts of stuff.
But that's not fair, because most people die from E. coli, and that's from spinach. You never hear of someone dying from cannabis.
I know.
They die from spinach. All those people
right.
trying to eat healthy.
Yeah. It's the regulated market. That's what the standard. I don't know why. It's just a plant.
And no one's regulating. No one says your spinach has to be tested, but that's what people die from.
I know. I don't understand it. It's the only specialty crop I know. I mean, we grow lettuces and herbs, and we have to abide by these food safety regulations. Handling, USDA shows up at our facility. They grab a head of lettuce. They drive out to the gate. And then they call us and say, listen, we found E. coli on one of your heads of lettuce. What do you do now? So we have to have these policies and procedures in place. Otherwise, they'll shut us down. So that's, when you deal with the government, you are at their mercy. So, that's, and that's just in lettuces and herbs. The federal government gets involved with it. We're lucky it's just going to be the state government getting involved. So wait till you deal with the feds. It's no fun. So.
No. Anyone else have a question for Paul? Or for me, if you need to discuss intellectual property for either plant patent, or you want to trademark your specific logo for your company, for branding, any other questions?
I know I came out a little late, but can you talk a little bit about those who want to use it for edibles? Is it differently regulated, or how is that going to work?
Yeah, so edibles are a product of the extracted molecules out of the flower. So you grow the plant, and then you take those flowers that are produced, and they're usually about 20 or 30% by dry weight, cannabinoids, and then you use a process. A lot of people use ethanol to break down the plant matrix, and then that then enables you to separate the individual molecules in the plant, and that's where you produce this distillate. And then distillate is very lipophilic, meaning it sticks to fat. So that's why you see it in cookies, gummies, and everything. So you can it's very soluble in fats. So that's why so the edibles will be a product, a further refined cannabis oil that then just gets added to food. But then you can also, I've seen these home infusers that are amazing too, where you can just do it at home. Just melt some cannabis in some butter. And it's a similar process where the good parts of the plant the cannabinoids will end up sticking to the fat molecules of that butter. And then you have an infused butter. So people have been doing that at home for 100 years. But in a regulated market, it's going to be very, again, regulated, where you're going to have to produce the plant and have it tested, and then go through this whole chemical process where you're extracting the desirable molecules out, and then that has to be tested, and then sent to a bakery as an ingredient to go into cookies, gummies, whatever. So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, from your experience, are you noticing that there are a lot of people who want to get into that side, where either they're just creating the THC oils for retail sale, or are you hearing a lot about people who just want to buy the oils to do the bakery? What is your feel on the business side?
That's going to be a business that we're really active in, and the best, still to this day, the best cannabis and flower is the format that is still king in all legal markets.
Right. I was like, as I said earlier, thank you, Diane, for joining us. I was touring Columbia Care, which is the medical dispensary here in Rochester, and they a big chunk of their business is gummies. So they're currently doing that. It's a huge moneymaker. So yeah.
Yeah, they're really popular, and especially in another format too that's really popular is the vaporizers. They're very discreet.
Yeah.
You don't want to, some people don't want to, smell like flower after you just smoked a, blunt or something. So people want these more discreet methods of consumption. So
yeah,
I think there's going to be tons of growth in all of these the alternative consumption.
Yeah, there's a market breakdown of like, who's doing, how people are purchasing, and most of it is flower, and then vape, and then edibles, and then there's actually, I learned yesterday, cannabis suppositories. So if you have like irritable bowel syndrome and like Crohn's disease, that you can have a suppository. It's a very small part of the market, but the people that use it and say it works for them, like really, really swear it works for them. So probably too much information. I'm sorry, guys.
Not necessarily. And I do have a question. Well, you kind of answered it. I was going to ask you, has anybody told you about the effects of it, positive, and how it works? So if you could elaborate, maybe.
The positive effects, did you say?
Mm-hmm. Like, has anyone come to you that you know who uses it as far as suppositories?
Yeah, so
okay.
So yeah, so for the suppositories, like again, if they have irritable bowel, if they have Crohn's disease, which is an inflammation of the bowel, they don't like to, the manufacturers don't like to spend a lot of money making that, because not a lot of people purchase those. But for the people that purchase them, they are devoted, they swear by it, and they typically have a chronic condition that is not going to go away. So they're going to be lifelong purchasers of said
Mhm.
suppository. You know,
Thank you.
the mechanism of action, I can't speak to. Like, I mean, what is the difference between the suppository and smoking it? I can't say. I'm not a gastrointestinal physician, but
Mhm.
they do, you know, the people that use it say that there is a distinct difference.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, well then thank you all for joining us. Again, you will be sent the files that Paul used, as well as the link to the recording. And I appreciate you all coming out, or not coming out, but joining us tonight. And again, the Cannabis Industry Meetup is the first Wednesday of every month from 6 to 7:30 p.m. I'm not entirely sure what our topic is for next month, but please join us. And okay. Yeah, Kay, yeah, I don't know. Possibly. So, but again, you'll receive our information if you want to set up a meeting to discuss business startups, your legal structure, anything like that, financing, all that good stuff. So, Paul, any final thoughts?
No, I just want to thank everyone for listening and tuning in tonight. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Yeah. So thank you guys. Have a great evening. And hopefully we'll see you next month. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.